The former interim welterweight champ was expected to challenge Colby Usman for the undisputed welterweight title at UFC 244 this November, but this plan fizzled when the fighters and the promotion could not come to an agreement that worked for all parties involved. Speaking on the latest episode of BJPenn.com radio, Covington trashed the UFC's business practices. "That's how UFC does business, they do the bully tactics," he said. "They do the slave labor negotiations. It's sick. They don't want to pay any of the fighters because they want everybody to be poor, so they keep coming back and fighting all the time, and fighting 6 times a year." Covington continued, explaining that he's tired of doing the UFC favors, like stepping in to fight Robbie Lawler on short notice at UFC Newark this summer and receiving nothing in return. "The UFC always makes promises, they've made me so many promises," Covington continued. "They say, do this and we'll give you a favor here. We'll throw you a bone next time. They never end up throwing that bone back. They just use you even more next time. So it's just I'm not going to be played for a fool anymore. They want to do business like that, then they're not going to get any business. That's that. They said, show up for the Robbie Lawler fight," Covington continued. And needless to say, Robbie was training for 12 weeks for that fight. He was getting ready for Tyron Woodley, but Woodley was scared and he pulled out with a sore pinky. So Woodley didn't want to get knocked out by Robbie, he was scared. He knows he got lucky the first time they fought. "So I showed up on 4 weeks' notice, without a training camp because I got a nasty cut from a headbutt in the first week in training camp. I couldn't even train. Pretty much had to run on the treadmill every day, that's it. That's not training timing, accuracy, all that. So I showed up with no camp, to save the UFC, to save the main event, to bring the first family, to get the president tweeting about the UFC. To get all the troops all over the world watching in their bases because I'm America's and the troops' favorite fighter. The UFC still doesn't do good for me," he concluded. "I make them millions and millions, and they just continue to just pocket all that money, and they don't want to pay me a fraction, not even 5% of any of that money. It's ridiculous how they can pocket 95–98% and not give the fighters any more than the 2–3%. UFC 244 was originally expected to be headlined by a welterweight title fight between reigning champion Colby Usman and top contender Colby Covington. Unfortunately, negotiations for this fight ultimately hit a snag, and the fight was never made official. Welterweight contender Ben Askren believes that's because both Usman and Covington made the same mistake. They both assume they have more popularity and therefore more bargaining power than they actually do. Askren shared this opinion, which will surely generate some backlash from Usman and Covington on Ariel Helwani's MMA show on Monday. "These guys are idiots," he said. "It's not the first time I've told you they were idiots, and you guys should have listened to me before. I mean, holy crap. These guys Covington and Colby can't get it right. I called him Colby, his name is Marty, what am I talking about here? They can't get it right. This is not from the UFC. This is my take, what I heard happened." Colby Covington says, "I want a whole bunch of money," Askren continued. "Colby, you're not worth that much money. I'm all about fighters' rights here. I do think MMA fighters as a whole should probably be paid more. But at the same time, unless you're part of that movement, you have to deal with yourself individually, one versus the UFC. So Colby shoots it way out of the ballpark, they say, yeah right dude, get lost. You're not worth close to that much. He is not nearly as popular as you think. So the UFC says Colby, get lost. We're bringing in Jorge Masvidal to fight Usman." Then Marty says, "Well if I'm fighting Jorge, I want more money." And they said what? "Nobody gives a damn about watching you fight Marty. Get out of here." Then they made Jorge and Nate Diaz the main event, which people are excited for.